Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Invisible Talent. Today I'm here with Alba, a creative artist, and today we're focusing on her photography. Hi, thank you for being with me.
Hey, Kaylee, thank you for having me.
So, you mainly do photography. Do you have other aspects of creating that you like to dabble in?
Definitely. Besides photography, I also enjoy painting and drawing. Drawing, call it more doodling than drawing, just because I don't feel like it's actual drawing, you could say, but it's my own form of doodling and releasing some of that tension here and there. But yeah, besides that, I like dancing and music as well. I did, about a year of violin in school, so yeah. Yeah, I like a few different things.
Do you feel like you gravitate towards different methods of creating for like different outcomes or like to process things? When do you gravitate towards what?
Um, well, some obviously if I'm going through something, then yeah, I'm likely gonna, try to focus on a way to be able to release that, either through pictures or drawing or, maybe even words, photography, poetry and things like that. So, I feel like sometimes it's different. It could be a happy moment that could make me want to, do something, release some creativity, or it could be, a really bad time or a heartbreak or something that's, tough in that time where it's like you kind of need, another way to release it besides maybe talking to people or doing other things. So yeah, it's different, different, you could say it's different reasons for it, I guess.
Yeah.
Different times.
Like a nice way to process, exactly like you said. Um, so do you prefer one over the other of like all your creativity, or do you kind of just allow whatever calls to you, like you go to it?
I think mostly photography, I would say that's the one that I mainly gravitate to the most. But here and there, I have my moments where, sometimes poetry might draw me, to be able to
Oh,
be like, okay, let me put some words out there. Like I have stuff in my brain going, let me put it into like a notepad. Or other times it might be just wanting to sit down with a pen and just start, doodling something on my sketchbook. So yeah, it's the it, different moments for it, but mostly photography. I would say that's the main one.
what is your favorite thing about photography?
I would say being able to create and save those moments, those memories. Sometimes I could look at a picture and I'll know exactly what was going on, how I was feeling, things about that day that, you're like, oh, that was maybe 10, 15 years ago,
Yeah.
but it sticks. And I feel like that's kind of the really awesome thing about photography that, you can take a picture and you save that moment. And it's also saving a memory, a feeling, a time, from the past. So that's probably the main reason why I like it.
I like it, like captures the moment. It's perfect. I mean, like that is what a camera is for, but like tend to forget about like the rest that comes with it, like what was happening around the photo as well.
The feelings and that
Yeah.
time and just the memories that come back with that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
How would you like if you can you describe your style of photography in like 3 words? I know it's tough.
I feel like it would be spontaneous visual moments.
Oh, okay.
Just because when I do my photography, I feel like it is very much a spontaneous in the moment type of thing. Because sometimes if I try to force it, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
I could take 20 different pictures and I'll hate all of them. And I'm like, okay, the mood and the moment's not there. I'm not going to do it.
Force
But
it. Yeah.
yeah, but sometimes it's spontaneous where it's like I just happen to come across, a specific light, the way it's, catching on something or, something along my walk path. And I'm like, oh, that could be something, or I could take a picture and I just see it in that moment. So yeah, it's very spontaneous most of the times.
When like speaking of like that spontaneity, is there anything besides spontaneity that's a part of your creative process when it comes to photography?
Um, Definitely, I would say emotion and feeling. Just because if I'm not feeling it, it's
Yeah.
not, and it's hard to force it. And I know sometimes I think that's kind of the reason why I was never able to like really throw myself into how do you say into doing more commercial photography,
Mhm.
something where it's like I have to produce and get it out there regardless if I feel like it or not.
Yeah.
um and for many people it works and they're able to, and that's great. For me, I feel like it's very much different than that. That's why I was never able to do that. But yeah, it's very, very in the moment.
Yeah. Do you think there's like a theme or any similarities between like what you gravitate towards taking pictures of?
It tends to be like geometry and light, lines, curves, nature, obviously, what's around me, the street art,
Okay.
everything around me pretty much. Yeah.
Then with what you take, like from your perspective of those photographs, do you think there's like an emotion behind it ever? Like that others can feel?
Um, I would probably, I mean, I would hope it would be inspiration and curiosity, you
Okay.
know.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell because obviously each person's going to look at an image and they're going to take something different from it, or they're going to see something different from it, or feel something different. Uh,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I would hope that it would give them some inspiration and curiosity.
Do you feel like you feel those things when you're taking the picture too?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's that curiosity of like, oh, that looks kind of cool. Like, let me see how that, final image comes
Yeah.
out. Let me play around with the angle and so yeah, there is a lot of curiosity around it for sure.
Think that could be even put into a fourth word that how like to describe your art. The like curious spontaneity is another, I feel like a good
Right.
descriptor of your work.
Definitely. Thank
Okay, we're gonna backpedal a little bit. Is there someone or a particular piece of art, like what inspires you?
I would say, I mean, mostly obviously like what's around me, nature, my surroundings, where I go, what I do. Sometimes it's myself. I like to do myself portraits as well. So sometimes, I'm like, oh, that looks kind of cool. Let me play around with that. So I feel like it's a lot of different inspirations, but I mean, there's also been artists that have inspired me as well. Photographers like Francesca Woodman, Edward Weston, Imogen Cunningham, um, Henry Cartier-Bresson, people that like they have their way of creating pictures, and it's a different feeling.
Mhm.
And I feel like especially with Francesca Woodman, because her pictures are so vulnerable, where it's very inspiring, and I think that's inspired a lot of my self portraits as well.
Ooh, okay. Can you recall when your like first desire to create began?
I would say, I mean, I first kind of started feeling it maybe like in my early 20s.
Okay.
I feel it, like I felt that need to kind of create and go into some sort of creativity. And I mean, I never felt like I was like really, really great at drawing or painting. So I didn't feel like I wanted to kind of gravitate there. But I was curious about photography. And I actually, at the time, I had an ex-boyfriend. Well, he was a boyfriend at that time, but an ex-boyfriend that was a graphic designer. So that kind of led me into that creativity and too. But I would say once I started thinking about it and I took my first photography class, I just fell in love with the darkroom, you know, and just being able to make something and take these pictures and catch these moments, and I felt like I just wanted to keep doing it. But yeah, and I took a few more classes, but obviously it was something that I just always kind of, yeah, always kept doing off and on.
So, I love that. Like just especially I know we've chatted about this before, but like the dark room and like the whole process is such a cool thing. Do you feel like taking those classes has shaped your, I guess, style of photography at all after taking those classes?
I would say it's definitely helped me grow because, a lot of the times, I mean, you can take pictures, on the day to day. But when you're taking a class, it'll have you focus on something particular. Where it's like, okay, maybe I've never thought about taking a picture like this, or how do I do this? So it kind of makes you get out of that little comfort zone to try something new in the class. And then, it ends up kind of helping you get more of that knowledge and that experience. And be like, oh, maybe I can try another type of photography, or a different style, or doing something that, out of the norm within photography. So it definitely did inspire me and help me for sure. And I mean, I'm still taking classes, so I
I love
still
that. Always a learning. Do you
do.
remember like your first creative project that you were like really excited about and just like when you like were working on it or like when you got to the end, you're just like so proud of yourself?
It's hard to tell because I feel like I don't know, like my work is very in the moment, and I feel like sometimes I don't see it as like a project because sometimes
Okay.
I work on it for too long.
Uh-huh.
If anything, I would say like any of the projects that I did maybe in school were a little bit different because, then it was like being in the dark room and having to like constantly manipulate that image. Paper after paper after paper, and then you're finally like, okay, I finally got to the right image. But yeah, I mean, if anything, when I do produce, or I do feel like I want to put something out there, I mean, my initial feeling is obviously, excitement, a little bit of anxiety,
Yeah.
'cause I don't know how it's going to be seen or taken. But then I also feel, proud and happy that, I made that, and I put that out there, and I'm like, okay, I like it. I'm enjoying it, and I hope everybody else does too. So it is a little bit of both of those back and forth feelings, you could say.
Yeah, there's also like I think like a sense of detachment that you have to do because kind of going back to what we said before, it's like you're making your work for you. And if someone doesn't like it, then you're like, well, it's not for you then.
Right. And, clearly not every art, and every piece that's out there is for everyone or talks to everyone. So very, very true. It might not be for them.
Yeah. Like, would you say your inspiration has changed over time, like as you've grown?
I would say definitely. It I'm trying to think. It's changed a lot, definitely. I mean, I feel like with like the editing process itself, I mean, I tend to take a lot less pictures now than I did maybe before, with like a single thing that I might be taking a picture of, just because I want to have, less pictures to have to choose from. Or, have it be too many of the same, and then everything starts looking the same and I can't pick.
That's not, do you think that like shooting with a film camera versus digital like kind of makes it more special because it's just like, okay, like gotta trust that that's done.
Exactly. It definitely does because yeah, I mean, you have just those one, two, three shots that you're gonna do. And you hope it comes out,
Yeah.
because you're not looking at it real time. And then if it doesn't, you have to go back out there and be like, well, I gotta reshoot, so it's
Yeah.
very, yeah, it's way more special with the film. But it's obviously you get a lot more chances to play with it with the digital because you
Yeah. Like
try
there's
over
pros and
and
cons to
again.
both. Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay. What has been your biggest challenge as you've kind of grown into like the current creation that you put out?
I mean, I would say probably just dealing with the hurdles and the blocks in life over time, sometimes having those things kind of, set my path in different, different ways where it's like, I might want to try to continue school, but then something happens and I can't, so I have to, divert to something else. So I feel like it tends to be a lot of those things, and just trying to keep myself fresh and new as much as I can with what I do put out there, because I never want to feel like, I'm putting out the same picture over and over and over again. But sometimes that can be hard.
Yeah.
you know? But trying to keep myself focused to try something different, try something new, try to do something that's not from, the same that I've done before. But yeah, just keeping myself on top of that.
You mentioned creative block. How do you like what's your experience with that? Like how do you work through it? Do you take a pause? What do you do when you experience creative block?
I would say, I mean, depending on the situation, I mean, sometimes it tends to be like a life block that, you
Okay.
know, kind of hard to feel that need or that want to produce something. I mean, you want to, but then you kind of feel like everything that's coming out is linking back to that feeling and that time that you're going through. And sometimes you don't want to keep too many memories of those times. So that could be kind of tricky, but yeah, I mean, it can be hard to get out of the block sometimes. I would say sometimes it's just trying to refocus things, try to look at the things that are going on a little bit differently to try to get out of that.
Mhm.
And I notice sometimes it might be like a slow process. I usually notice like I'll go to the doodling because that I'm able to sit there and my mind, like I don't know, when I'm doing something with my hands, I feel like my mind kind of calms itself. Even though photography is also with your hands, but there's a different process when I'm sitting there, with a line over again, or drawings, focusing on something that I'm trying to finish.
Yeah, it's like the
Start to-
hands to like head, like the movement and like the pen to paper type thing. It's
right,
definitely,
right. Or like when I pick up a paintbrush and I'm just sitting there like just bloop bloop bloop,
uh,
and before I know it, I'm quiet and I'm just doing my thing, and it's calming. So
yeah. Would you say it's meditative too?
oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I've mostly those two, I would say, painting and drawing. For me, it tends to feel more meditative. Photography tends to feel more quick, I would say.
Okay.
Maybe the editing process after can take a little bit longer. Like I might look at a picture 10, 20 times before I decide to actually share it. So it's a little different of a process, but yeah, very meditative.
With like how long would you say like do you have a photograph that's like taken the longest for you to kind of get to the end product?
Hmm. God. Sometimes, I mean, there's been pictures that I've sat on for, a year or two, maybe. And I still have pictures right now from like some years back. And I'm like, well, maybe one day I'll like that's, like I like that. Maybe I'll put that out there one day. But yeah, I sometimes it might take a minute for me to get to that point, especially if I'm like busy with things and everything, then I don't put as much time into that, I would say at the moment. But yeah, I would say a few years, probably.
I don't want to word it this way, but this is how it's in my head. Do you let other things take priority over like creative output? Like maybe when personal things take more priority than like making time to create something?
I mean, I try to balance it as best as I
Oh,
can,
that's
as
good.
best as I can, unless I'm really, really going through something and I'm just kind of like not in that headspace to even like try to put myself there, you could say, where I'm just like, okay, I just need the quiet, the calm. But yeah, I try to balance it out to where it's like, okay, let me like do what I need to do, work, school, whatever, but still like try to find some time to at least like, take a few pictures when I'm out walking down the street or going somewhere or doing something. So yeah, it's a balancing act, I would say.
That's good to hear, I guess, on my end. Because you're making time for it and like prioritizing it and almost being mindful about it. Because I know in some instances, like when it gets to be too like work focus pressure on creative output, you can get burnt out. And so,
Exactly.
to me, at least for you, it sounds like you have a nice balance going, and that's not the norm, at least from what in talking to other people. So I'm like, it's refreshing to hear that you're like, no, I make time for that. And I'm like, oh, yay, I like hearing
I
that.
Yeah, no, because I mean it, it helps as well. It helps to kind of ease things a little bit. And yeah, I mean you could easily just stick to the work and school and just, keep doing that. But yeah, sometimes you do need to just kind of stop for a minute and be like, oh, let me actually like try to take a picture or do something, creative outside of just the normal work and school, work and school.
Okay. What is the toughest part about being a creative? And then you can also answer if it's in the same thing. What's the easiest part about being a creative?
I would say toughest would probably be the self-criticism,
Mm.
the um I mean, I say self-criticism, but it's like your own constructive criticism, you could say, where it's like you're always seeing like
Mhm.
where you could have taken it differently or how you could have done it differently or yeah, just having that critic always in your head.
Yep.
That I would say that would definitely be the toughest. Easiest would probably be just being able to have that way to express myself with photography, to create something with photography. um a lot of people can pick up a camera and take a picture, but it might not always have the composition or feel like something um that you really want to put out there. So it's I think I would say, I mean, it can be hard too, but it's probably the easiest a little bit more, I would say. Yeah.
Um, is there a toughest part about composition? Like
Mm.
your experience, I guess I would say.
Um, Probably just making sure that like you're mindful of it in the moment. Um, and because I mean, I know a lot of people like to take pictures and then, throw it into Photoshop and change it all up, which works in a lot of different cases. But I feel like sometimes it's nice to kind of compose the image as you're doing it in that moment and thinking about everything that's around, what's way in the back, what's in the middle ground, what's right in front of you, does it balance? Does it say something? Does it work together? You
That's
know,
kind of
it,
like
yeah,
being in multiple places and like at once when like shooting the picture. So I bet that internal dialogue when you're like taking the picture is just so noisy.
exactly. And then it's like, oh, let me like change angle. Maybe let me try and see how it looks from this side or from that side or from up here or down here, because every angle is going to have a different outlook and different output of how it looks.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's always like the really fun thing to do, is just to kind of see that image in that moment. But yeah, it's it can be difficult sometimes, but I feel like it can be done
Yeah.
as long as it's, in that mind, if you're in it's in that mindset at the moment. Like
Yeah, like the can do. You're like, I'm gonna do this. And even if I don't succeed, you still
on your
tried and figured out what doesn't work.
exactly. And then you can always try later. Maybe it doesn't work in that moment, but you
Yeah.
might later and maybe then it might work. Sometimes the lighting can be off, when you're trying at first, or just the moment's not there. I've had moments where it's like there's people all around, and sometimes you want people in your shot, but a lot of times you don't. So sometimes it's like you have to sit there and be like, okay, let me wait until it clears out so my shot is like the way I want it.
A lot of patience.
Very much, very much.
Okay, so we're kind of towards the end. So do you have any upcoming projects that you're working on that you want to share and have people look out for?
None at the moment, to be honest, but I do feel like, I mean, I'm always, looking through my images to see, what stands out, for me to share. So I'm, trying to do that as much as I can, at the moment. And here and there, I mean, I might get like, photography assistant gigs or behind the scenes type gigs. So, I try to share that whenever I, do those as well. So they don't happen as often. I wish they did, but it's still nice when they do. I'm on Instagram. My Instagram's Alba Photography. So it's just like photography, but instead of the PHO, it's FOTO. So and Alba ALBA.
Well, perfect. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Thank you for having me, Kaylee. It was fun.